Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new stream. We have a lot to cover tonight, and I'm only 1 minute late, which has to be a record time for me appearing to a live stream in quite some time. So like the stream down below for my punctuality, subscribe to the channel if you have not yet, and also hit that bell for notifications. We have a lot to cover. I'm sure we're going to be touching on the Trump arraignment from time to time. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of that in the super chats. We'll mix it in. We have elections tonight as well. Our first major election night stream since the Georgia runoffs. We have a Wisconsin Supreme Court statewide general election that will determine the outcome of the court for quite some time. And what that means and what that entails is the fact that you have a race for the Supreme Court between Daniel Kelly, a former Supreme Court justice, and then you have the liberal Janet Protasiewicz. Dan Kelly is the conservative. Protasiewicz is the favorite. Kelly has been gaining a lot of momentum. Do I expect Kelly to come out victorious? It would be an upset. That doesn't necessarily mean that it is impossible, given the fact that we did see big election day turnout today, even in some rural places. But furthermore, we have a long way to go here. We don't have any results. There's also the Chicago mayor election where you have old school Democrat Paul Vallas winning against far left Democrat Brandon Johnson for the Chicago mayoral election. I don't think they have the results by ward available, but keep in mind Lori Lightfoot lost. She was in third place in the initial primary or jungle primary that took place there. And now you have the runoff for that. And it's Paul Vallas against Brandon Johnson. Brandon Johnson is the far left individual. Paul Vallas is more like an old school Democrat. He's better when it comes to being tough on crime. He's still a liberal, don't get me wrong, but this is Chicago. He's probably the best that you possibly could get there. So if you guys have any super chats during the stream, feel free to send them in. We'll try to get to them every half hour or so, maybe even sooner if the results take way too slowly to come in. But then here we go. We're going to be getting into some of the results. Keep in mind, Wisconsin doesn't close for another 7 minutes. I went live about 10 minutes earlier, kind of give a background on the race. I'm sure we're going to get a lot more people here in the mix when the results do start to pour in out of the state of Wisconsin. But so far, 78% of the vote is in Chicago. And Paul Vallas and Brandon Johnson are just 370 votes apart from each other. Very interesting here. So we'll see. But I will say, yesterday I released the documentary. Very long form video, probably my magnum opus up until this point on my channel. And I really have to say that it was well received. And I think it was a very important one, talking about the midterms. We've talked about them a lot. I'm sick of talking about the midterms, but we had to do a final video in the highest quality, demonstrating the fact that the establishment Republicans bear a wide supermajority of the blame for the midterms, not Donald Trump himself. And when you look into it, it's evident. And the only criticism that people threw my way was criticism of, hey, look at me. I didn't watch the video. Let me repeat the same talking points that you extensively went over and debunked in the video. It's laughable. That's all they can come up with, or try and just pick apart things that are objectively untrue. I think that that narrative is winning. So share that documentary if you guys get a chance and watch it probably tomorrow if you guys have not yet seen it, because it definitely is something that I put a lot of time into, and it's been very well received so far. So we'll get to that, but we'll get to some super chats already. The Wisconsin polls don't close for another 4 minutes, so we have a few. Just in time history says, which Republican has the best chance in the 2024 Arizona Senate race? That depends who runs. Obviously, we could talk about, oh, Andy Biggs could throw his hat in the ring, or somebody like Masters could give it another run. I'm not saying that those would be the best candidates, not saying they wouldn't be, but there's a lot that we don't exactly know about Arizona. Who's going to decide to run in 2024? I think that it really depends what happens in a three-way race. I think you're going to need about 46, 47, probably 47% of the vote in order to win. I think Gallego's got a ceiling somewhere around, 46%. And Sinema's going to be taking some establishment vote away from probably both sides. If she does decide to go through with running as an independent, she could obviously drop out at the last second, endorse Gallego, or maybe she'll have a personal vendetta against him, endorse the Republican nominee. Who knows? It's kind of out of line with her entire past trajectory as a politician, where she was extremely far left before she got into Congress and decided to grift off of the voters of Arizona. And now she's an independent. Who knows what her real end game is here at this point in her career. But what we do know is that she's likely going to be going up against Gallego, who would have defeated her in a primary, and then another Republican. I don't know who that's going to be. I don't know who the best candidate would really be either for that, but we'll have to see as time goes on. Sam Madsen says, why have Republican donors dried up so much? It hasn't been just for these Trumpian candidates either. Well, I think that you could maybe point to the fact that more wealthy voters or donors have been moving from the right to the left, but I think it's a little bit deeper than that. I just think that the RNC and these Republican strategists with these connections are just so incompetent to the point where they can't find those donors. Because when you look at it, yeah, the vote that has been for the, extremely wealthy electorate has shifted probably 10 to 20 points to the Democrats over the past 15, 20 years. But even so, it's not like you still don't have enough major donors on the right. There's no reason why candidates are going to be outspent 2, 3, 4 to 1. Even if they're not like these controversial candidates, they're still getting outspent by a lot. I think even Youngkin in Virginia was outspent by a decent amount, but he still was able to win because of how tactful he was on the campaign trail, about how good his ground game was. He was able to win. So there's a lot of things that go into it. Man Milk says, shave your hairy face, boy, by the way you make good content. Well, I don't know. It really depends. I'm kind of like in the stage where I'm not sure if I want to grow a beard or if I still want to be trimmed or clean shaven. I don't know. I'm not going to shave my face today, maybe sometime next week or something. I don't know. But thanks for the super chat. Thanks for saying I make good content. I do make good content. That is true. Many people are saying this. Jonathan Williams says Velas is struggling because of the Lightfoot and Johnson voters are going strong for Johnson. I mean, well, obviously the Johnson voters would be coming out for Johnson, but I heard mixed reporting of those Lightfoot voters. Some were going to Velas, some definitely are going to Johnson. Really depends on what sub-demographic that those voters really belong to. But we'll see as time goes on. There's probably higher turnout now than there was initially in the first round. I could be wrong about that, but we'll see. Lifo Foley says apparently a Democrat in North Carolina is switching. We may have to make a video about that, either on the website for exclusive members or maybe later this week on the main channel, because we have a lot of good news, especially positive news. That tends to be what people like to listen to, because it's true. But that doesn't necessarily mean we need to ignore the doomer news. And Johnson's taken the lead right now with 79% of the vote in. It'd be important, to actually be able to know where the votes are coming from. But New York doesn't exactly showcase that. So very interesting. But let's see. Wisconsin Supreme Court election is going to close in 10 seconds. The polls are closing in Wisconsin. Like the stream down below for good luck, and subscribe if you haven't yet for good luck as well, and hit that bell to ensure the good luck for the Supreme Court race. 900 live viewers here, and the polls have closed out of the state of Wisconsin. We're going to be waiting for more results to pour in any second now. We're going to be pulling up the old map. I think we're going to pull up the map for 2020 for Wisconsin as comparison on the screen, so you guys can see. We'll be comparing the counties from time to time as the results pour in. There we go. That's Wisconsin, but no votes yet so far. We have a long way to go. There's a lot of votes left in Chicago as well in the mayoral election. Brandon Johnson has indeed taken the lead, but there are a decent amount of votes left. It is such a razor-thin election margin so far. So we will see. More super chats here. No, we do not have any more at the moment. But if you guys want to send them in on our downtime while we're waiting for the hour-long vote count, feel free to send them in. I'll get to those when I get a chance. But I don't have any predictions for Wisconsin. I don't really have any high hopes for this election. I did my part. We definitely made several videos on the Wisconsin Supreme Court election at a time where no conservative leaders were really talking about this. Yes, that does include Donald Trump. Didn't really see him talking about it very much. Obviously, he's got a lot going on right now, but still would have liked to see a few truths from him about it. Would have liked to see a lot more attention being brought to this. So we'll see. But it does seem as if, we're not seeing a whole lot of pundits bringing these low profile races into the light. And I feel like if they did that a little bit more, you'd see more organizing for it. You'd see more canvassing. You'd see more people trying to help out. But it is what it is. This is definitely something that could be the funeral of Wisconsin's stream, or it will be one of the biggest political upsets that we've seen in a while. There were no polls conducted for this race. A lot of people said that Kelly was the weaker candidate in the primary. I didn't really see much of a difference between those two. Kelly lost by a lot in 2020, but the election was on the same day as the contested Democrat primary. And his primary opponent, Jennifer Doro, had some massive scandals that were actually unearthed after the primary took place, and they weren't really extensively covered. So looking at the big picture here, I'm not really entirely sure that Kelly was the worst option, but it does show that Republicans have a turnout problem. We'll see if that really kicks in, because you did see more conservatives go out and try to utilize early voting to their advantage, at least in the WOW counties, but the rural areas, which are the areas outstate in Wisconsin, the Obama counties that voted for Trump and are Republican counties now. You didn't see much in those counties in the early vote. But reports on turnout are conflicting, but it does seem as if there were a decent amount of election day votes in a lot of conservative counties and big conservative counties. But will it be enough to overcome this? I don't know. We'll have to see. When the results pour in, they should pour in any second now. We'll also look at the Chicago mayoral election race, where Brandon Johnson has taken a lead of 1,100 votes, but there's 21% of the vote reporting. So we will see. One person in chat says, why is that one rural county in Wisconsin so blue? That county is a Native American reservation. It's not a very big county. Netted Biden about 1,000 votes over Donald Trump. And turnout in that county for special elections does tend to be extremely low. So we'll see. Belfagor says, my pronouns are we're back. Dallas Sucks 69 says, I'm dooming mad hard. Mr. Jimmy said, if 2024 polls a 2,000, what would be the outcome? That really depends what you mean. Very close election would be the outcome if it's a repeat at 2000. Literally, God says, if Ron Johnson can win re-election, even though he called Barnes a bum in the debate, I have high hopes that Kelly will win. Well, Barnes is a bum. I don't really understand why that's some sort of like blasphemous thing to say. Sam Madsen says, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania were seemingly redder at the state and local level back when they were bluer at the federal level, which is weird. Yeah, but they put up very weak Republican candidates. It did seem to be. And you see the same thing happen in the Northeast to this day. And it really just depends on the state parties. I feel like the state parties were a little bit more competent back then, at least in Wisconsin. But it does seem like there is a long way to go reversing the trend in a lot of these places. You're not going to have Trump at the top of the ticket in every single election cycle to get those rural disaffected voters out, but you have to build a turnout operation so you can get those voters to turn out. Olivia Williams says, I love Sabatini, but why is he running where Laura Loomer is? They'll split the anti-Webster vote. Then Sabatini's a two-time loser. Is Loomer good? Well, I don't even know if she's running, first of all. But it really depends on how the primary shakes out. One of them is going to have to drop out eventually if they do. But I heard Loomer may actually run in a different district. I don't know if that's going to be true or not. But Jonathan Cox says, why is it when something historical happens, like a president's indicted or the queen dies, I feel moody about it? I have no idea. That would be a question that you would have to ask yourself, I guess. But it is something that I guess you would say, if you pay attention to politics a lot, it is definitely earth-shattering, just like a midterm underperformance would be, or an election loss or an election victory. Let's see. Alex P says, why was Oz a carpetbagger, but Mark Kelly isn't? I think it depends. I think Oz spent less time in Pennsylvania and was a celebrity, didn't really spend much time there for quite some time. Olivia Williams says, why would Trump do a plea deal not to run for no prison? I don't think he would. I think that he's got too much of a backbone to give into that, but that would definitely make the primary interesting. Byron Marble says, absolutely massive turnout at the polls today in Wisconsin. We witnessed 2020 presidential election level turnout. Well, it depends where you are. If you live in Madison, that's not a good sign. If you live in rural Wisconsin, that's a phenomenal sign. And the higher turnout on election day, for the most part, as long as it's not in Milwaukee City, because the early vote data for there was pretty weak, even though in the suburbs of Milwaukee, in Milwaukee County, it was pretty strong. It really depends on turnout. It all comes down to turnout. And we will see that. It will be showcased when the results pour in, which we have none so far. No results so far. But we'll go back to Chicago. No, that's city council. And there's nothing new out of Chicago for that either. So we'll see. We'll definitely keep watch as the night goes on for sure. But this definitely is something that could determine the outcome of the state of Wisconsin in 2024 even, because this determines redistricting. This determines election laws. They put it in the New York Times as voting rights issues or whatever, because that's how the left frames things. But election laws, which again are not the be all and end all if we use them to our advantage. And then we have the maps. They're going to draw Democrat gerrymandered maps because they're just salty about the fact they have horrible geography in the state of Wisconsin. You're going to see probably legalized late-term abortion if you see Prostacewicz win. And they're going to do everything that they can do to make the state a Democrat state, even though the electorate has been trending away from them, at least in presidential years, in recent years. And that's what it comes down to. That's what this election is about. It is about the cultural fate of Wisconsin in the future to make sure it ensures that Republicans will have a chance there, or even that it could be a conservative stronghold. So definitely we'd like to have some results here. Polls have been closed for about 8 minutes or so. We don't really have anything, but we have more super chats. Samuel Harrison said, what are your thoughts on the Andrew Tate release? I think that it's good because it's pretty obvious that he was locked up for bogus reasons. And the left hates him for bogus reasons. And we know that. And they don't go after actual confirmed sex traffickers or the people that were on the islands where that takes place, but they will go after some kickboxer who, you know, has maybe done a couple shady things in his past that lives in Romania. And why is he under fire? Because, I don't know, he teaches young men how to be more masculine on some of those like YouTube shorts videos. And he has a lot of good quotes. Like, that's why they're coming after him. It's like, yeah, he's done some questionable things in his past. I'm not going to defend everything the guy's ever done, but culturally speaking, is he a step in the right direction compared to what the mainstream culture promotes time and time again? Absolutely. So it's pretty obvious why they tried to get him. And now it seems as if the tides are kind of changing, the fact that he's being released, because they had nothing on him. And the women that were allegedly involved had already come out and said that he did nothing wrong. There should not have been a case there. And now he's finally been released to house arrest. And it's pretty evident why they tried to get him in the first place. But thankfully, he's out. So that's good. Top G is top free. Kyle Cannon says, fighting for freedom until I'm cold. I'll never stop fighting. Thanks, Rep. Well, hopefully, if you live in Wisconsin, you got people out to vote today, but we'll see. Sam Madsen says Republicans currently control the Wisconsin legislature 64-35 in the House and 22-11 in the Senate. When Janet orders a redraw, what's your guess to what those numbers will go down to? It depends on the map. It's very possible that they could try to make the state Senate like 50-50 or maybe even get it to flip. But when it comes down to the House, you'll probably will still see a majority there. I just don't know by what it would be. It also depends if they're taking future trends into account, because the map could be more Republican now. And then by the end of the decade, depending on how many seats they have in like Ozaukee County, whatever, then they could try to get those numbers to dip for the Republicans even more. So we'll see. IB says Dave called it for Brandon. I think that tweet was fake. I did see it. I checked the Twitter feed for like half a second there while we were waiting for the results, and I don't think that tweet was real. because the at was something else. Byron Marble says under the radar is for Dan Nodal in Wisconsin, Republican supermajority to impeach Evers. Well, we're still waiting on the special election results as well, but it is true. Keeping that special election Republican would ensure the supermajority there. I don't know if they're going to impeach Evers. I don't think they have the guts to necessarily, but they definitely had a lot more power. And one of the good results from the midterms was the fact that they were able to get that Senate supermajority. The problem is, I believe they lost their House supermajority by a couple of seats or so, and that's not a good thing. So back to Chicago. Nothing new out of Chicago. Nothing new out of Chicago. Nothing new out of the state of Wisconsin either. We're still waiting. Selection nights are like this. At least they've been for the past few years, ever since COVID hit. We have results. We have results. And they are out of Waukesha County. And it's probably one or two precincts that Daniel Kelly has a lead, but not by enough that he would need a precinct in Waukesha County to be by. But it is very, very early on. We don't know where those votes are coming from. But Daniel Kelly with a very small lead of 100, or not even 100 votes. He leads by 70 votes so far with less than 1% of the votes in. So we don't know where those votes are coming from or what type of votes they are, but it's not going to be enough to really make a difference. The next few dumps should tell us a lot more about this election than the initial dump did right there. So do keep that in mind. All right, back to Chicago. Nothing new out of Chicago. So we're going back to the Supreme Court. Yeah, stop the count. We'll take this end result. We'll take it, but a long way to go. To see what Decision Desk has. We even want to pull up Decision Desk. For some reason, Decision Desk isn't. Okay, here they have it up. Okay. They have a little bit of Madison in on Decision Desk, but let's see, 78-21 so far in this Dane County precinct that dropped. We don't know where it is, but we're still waiting on more. I'm sure they'll update it on the New York Times any second now. But so far, nothing really. Sam Madsen says there's a Trump +3 House seat in La Crosse that keeps electing a Dem and probably won't be redrawn. Does that go with Trump on the ballot? Potentially. Depends if that Dem is term limited. And if they are, then I think it would. It really depends on how much Trump wins that House seat by as well in 2024, or whoever the nominee is. So absolutely. We're not showing it here. They're not showing it at all. But we have a long, long, long way to go here. Long way to go. So back to Chicago. Brandon Johnson's expanded his lead. He now leads by 4,000 votes. So the far left candidate is in the lead in Chicago, which again, we saw kind of an opposite thing happen in 2021 and even 2022 in some places. A lot of the far left pro-crime mayoral or DA candidates actually ended up losing or underperforming. Yet in this election, we are seeing this shift back a little bit here. So we'll compare to Wisconsin when more results pour in. We don't have a lot in. We have more now. They put some of the votes in out of Dane County. Keep in mind, the liberal candidate, Janet Prostatsowicz, is in yellow. And then the magenta type of color there that Waukesha County is right now, that's Daniel Kelly. So far, he's at 60% in Waukesha. He leads by 20. Donald Trump won Waukesha County by around 21, but this is very early on. This is 3% of the vote. We don't know where these votes are exactly coming in from, but so far Daniel Kelly is at 60% in Waukesha. He's going to need to do a lot better than that in order to win, and it's very possible he will do a lot better than that to win, but we still have a very long, long way to go here. And we don't have any more counties in. So 6 or 7,000 votes or so. Sam Madsen says the Dem won by 3 in 2020 and 4 in 2022. Well, it's possible that district could flip then, and that would be a good thing, but there's just so much that we don't know. Dane County is very early on. Again, you're talking about 2 precincts or so here. Waukesha, there's more in, but still, Kelly's not hitting that margin yet, but it is very early. Checking on some of the other elections, Dan Nodal with a lead in the 8th District special election. He leads by around 200 votes there. And you talk about the ballot measures, conditions of release before conviction. So far, even in Madison, that is winning so far. Cash bail before conviction, even in Madison, cash bail is winning in Madison in some of these questions that they put on the ballot, some of these referendums. Welfare benefit requirement is winning in Madison as well. And it doesn't seem like there's really any other elections to cover. But still interesting to see what's going on there. Very interesting. And now there's more votes in. La Crosse County is 29%, and Prestosowitz is winning La Crosse County, but just by 12 percentage points. Keep in mind, this was a county that went for Biden by 13. So if you look at La Crosse and there's an underperformance of Prestosowitz, I don't know what vote that is. That's not entirely the best look for her there, but she is winning in Ozaukee. We don't know where the votes are in Ozaukee. Probably a Democrat area. She leads by 10 there. There was high turnout in the WOW counties. It's very unlikely that Prestosowitz takes Ozaukee County at the end of the day. She also has taken a lead in Door County. 45% of the vote is in. I assume that is the early vote in Door County. The rest of the vote there will likely favor Dan Kelly, but will it be by enough? That's the real question. So the map is starting to fill out a little bit more here, but it really depends what type of vote is in yet. And if this type of vote is in, that tends to be the early vote or the mail-in vote, that is probably decent news so far for Kelly. May not be decent enough for him, but we'll see. And now they've taken the votes away from Door County for some reason on the New York Times. I don't know why that is. Michael says thoughts on when the first Republican primary debate will be for 2024. I would assume it would be sometime in the late summer, because DeSantis is likely going to announce his run sometime after the first legislative session is over, probably in June, maybe even in July is when he'll announce, though. Grant Mandel says, ponder that this is 2064 and President Barron Trump has concluded his tour of revenge on all people who harmed his father. Would be so based. We'll see. Oh, new vote dump Madison. 13% of the vote is in Madison. Janet is leading by nearly a 50% margin there as anticipated, but just 13,000 raw votes there. So long way to go or so. Let's see. Blue Basis says protect democracy. Example, ballot harvesting Milwaukee. Dino Rick says Dan Nodal just lost his lead. Well, how much of the vote is in? 6% of the vote is in. That could be early vote as well. IB says she won a Trump plus 20 county. No, she didn't win the Trump plus 20 county. The Trump plus 20 county is 8% in. If she wins Ozaukee County, it's over. It is over if she wins Ozaukee County. Personally, I don't believe that it's going to happen. But we'll see. Dane County, Dan Kelly's actually not doing too bad so far. He has 26% of the vote in Dane. Trump himself got 22% of the vote in Dane, where this election was pretty much razor thin. Kelly's going to have to outperform Donald Trump if he wants to win, at least percentage-wise, by what, 0.6? Is it 0.6%? Yeah, 0.63%. That's what he'll have to outperform Trump by. And so far, Wood County, that's the early vote in. Dan Kelly with a 10-point lead. That's rural Wisconsin. 10-point lead in the early vote there. Wood County here, Trump won it by 20. So he's going to have to run up the margins there with whatever vote is left, or it's not going to be a good thing for him. Janet's also taken the lead in Jefferson County. Again, if this is the early vote, that's good news for Kelly. If not, It's bad news for Kelly. So we'll see. And there's a long way to go here. Just 10% of a lead so far for Protasiewicz. But again, a lot of that is Dane County. A lot of it is early. And we're waiting on the rest of the state to fill in. But it is what it is. And this is supposed to be an election that will favor the liberals. Republicans, or I should say conservatives. Dan Kelly was not supposed to win this election. However, there is a long way to go, and there is a non-zero chance he could pull it off, given the fact that he does have momentum. But 81% of the vote is in Chicago. Brandon Johnson has a lead over Paul Vallas, I don't know how you pronounce it, by 4,000 votes or so. Vallas led the early turns. Johnson has taken the lead recently. Jonathan Williams says, I work for my local courts. Cash bail is very important to ensure criminals don't flee from punishment. Maybe there's some common sense left in Wisconsin. And it's funny when you put these things up to an actual vote based on the questions, if they're actually worded properly, that even in places like Madison, you'll see those far left reforms tend to fail. Kenosha's in 11%. I don't even know how you say it. I say Protasiewicz because that's how it looks like it's spelled. But she leads there in the early vote, but just 11% of the vote is in there. Waukesha, 14%, Ozaukee, 8%. So you have big counties that are filling their votes in, but it's not by enough to really determine what the actual outcome is going to look like there. So it is a 5-point lead for Janet. Right now, 6% of the vote is in. Vallas, okay. Protasiewicz. All right, we'll go with Protasiewicz. We'll do that. So it's still very early on. We have about 1/20th of the votes in that will eventually be counted. We have no votes in out of the Fox cities, no votes in out of Green Bay or Milwaukee. Madison's dropped some. The Wow counties have dropped some as well, but it's not really enough to really make a difference. Caleb Andrews says Protasiewicz. Protasiewicz. Oh, it's exhausting. Potato sandwich is, I guess, what we could just call her because that's what the name literally just looks like. So, yeah. Protasiewicz. Janet, we'll call her Janet. Janet is her name. No jail Janet. That's what they called her. So we'll call her Janet. But let's see. Grant Mandel says, what could I do to be effective while being too young to vote? Well, you could still, I believe, work on campaigns if you're not old enough to vote. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to, unless that does violate some campaign finance law or something. I would assume that you could volunteer in politics. I mean, you see high schoolers do that all the time. So if you're too young to vote, you could still get involved somehow, some way. It would just be in a limited capacity, but at least you'll get to kind of learn the rules of the game a little bit. .6% of the vote is in. 81% of the vote is in Chicago. And Johnson has a lead over Vallas. Still, nothing has changed since we last looked at it. 20% of the vote is in now. So more of the vote filled in out of Waukesha County. 52% of the vote is in. Daniel Kelly with a lead, but he only has 18 points on Janet there. That's not going to be enough if that's the end result. But more of Ozaukee has come in. He's narrowed, or he's actually taken the lead in Ozaukee County. Dodge County, he's up to 63% with 71% of the vote reporting. Compare that to 2020. He's roughly around Trump's margins, but not quite there. Fond du Lac County, very early on there. Milwaukee County, 49% of the vote is in. Janet has a lead there of about 40,000 votes there. He's at 31. Keep in mind, Trump got 29, roughly about the same margin. In fact, you could even say he has a narrower margin in Milwaukee. He's narrowed that margin there a little bit. Janet has grown her lead there. So she leads by 20% statewide. Madison is 36% in. Milwaukee's 50% in. And now we're seeing votes fill in out of some of these northern ancestrally Democrat counties in the state of Wisconsin up there by the Iron Range. These three, the big three, Douglas, Bayfield, and Ashland. that's where you're going to see Dems get some rural votes as well. Also, Sauk County, half the vote is in. Janet's up by 16 in Sauk County. Again, that's likely the early vote. If it's not, it's going to be a very short night and a very big loss for Daniel Kelly, even a bigger loss than we would have initially anticipated. But still, it is early. We don't know where the votes are from. If they're election day votes, probably going to benefit Kelly, depending on where they are too. But if it's early voting, it will probably benefit Janet by a decent amount. Now, Brown County, 9% of the vote is in there. Dan Kelly with a 20-point lead in Brown County. Again, this is a county that went for Donald Trump by 7 percentage points. That's the home of Green Bay, Wisconsin. Trump won it by 10,000 votes. Trump plus 7 so far. That is Kelly by 20. But again, where are the votes coming from? And is it early voting? That's another question. But so far, Kelly is at 41%. He's going to have to narrow that margin quite a bit in these ensuing vote dumps if he wants to have a chance. But you do have a lot of rural Wisconsin that is not fully filled in yet. Dunn County, 10% of the vote is in. That margin for Dunn County, not very good. If that's going to stay where it is, that's a Trump plus 14 county. He'll be done in more ways than one. Saga Fraga says, hey, Rep, I've kind of stood back from politics since the midterms for obvious reasons. I'm from Northern Michigan and I'm a Zoomer. I'm feeling incredibly black-pilled and I'm kind of panicking about my future. Well, that would make multiple of us, I guess we should say. You can't stay in a state of constant despair because then you're never going to be able to get anything done. You're never going to be able to climb out of anything. That doesn't just go for politics. I think that goes for life as well. You need to stay positive. You have to believe that we can save this country, even if you can realistically acknowledge the fact that it may not even be done within our lifetimes in many cases, but you will have to keep fighting and it will get worse before it gets better, but there will be a light at the end of the tunnel. I can say that much. So more votes are in out of some of these rural counties. Barron County, 24 points for Kelly so far. Barron County voted for Trump by 26. So underperformances, but it depends on what type of votes these are. Where are they coming from? We don't really have any counties that are all the way in. Washington County, 15% of the vote is in. Dan Kelly with a 26-point lead there. Again, that's a county that Trump won by 28. So he's going to have to do a lot better in those wow counties when all the votes are counted if he really wants to have a chance. And he might, given the current math statewide, given the counties that are out that haven't exactly filled in yet. But yeah, the margin's not going to be 16.8% when it's all said and done. However, it's still not looking that good so far. And we really didn't think that it would be looking that good, but that's beside the point. All right, Milwaukee's 49% in. La Crosse is 79% in now. And Janet is down by 24 points in La Crosse, or she's up by 24 in La Crosse. Yeah, that's not going to be good. That's not good for Dan Kelly because this is a county that voted for Biden by just, 13 points? And you look at that there, it's only 7,000 votes. But if those numbers keep and they stay at 63-37, for the last 21% to report, that's ball game basically. If you're going to be seeing that all over the place. Greene County, this is a toss-up county pretty much at presidential elections, at least when Trump is on the ballot. Janet leads 60-40 there so far. So we're still waiting on a lot of counties to report their votes. Kelly has narrowed the percentage margin down. He's at 42%, but still, that's not good. That's not good at all. That's not good at all for Dan Kelly. So there's a lot of ground to cover here, but it's just not looking good. And we knew that this would be a long shot, definitely from the get-go. We know that Republicans are having problems turning out voters in rural Wisconsin, and you see changes to the suburbs. The suburbs are growing. You look at trends in certain areas. You can't always rely on them. And Dan Kelly, somebody who's a generic conservative for the most part. He's very generic. It's not like he's this, Trump-aligned populist warrior or whatever. He's not. He's very generic. But that's beside the point. Okay, now there's more votes in. Dane is 54% in now. Now he's down. Now he's back down to being down by 20. So this thing isn't particularly close. We'll go back to the Chicago mayoral election for a second. Johnson has expanded his lead there to 7,000 votes. In the state legislature, Dan Nodal's actually down still by 4 or 5%, with 32% of the vote reporting. So there is still a long way to go here. Portage County, Janet leads by 40, but that is very early on. Wood County, Kelly has a 12-point lead. 73% of the vote is reporting in Wood County. Again, that's a county that Trump won by nearly 20. So not exactly getting the turnout that he really needs in a lot of these rural places. And you look at the margins in some of the suburban counties, it depends on what happens down the stretch in them. It's possible he outperforms Donald Trump in the suburbs. He even did it when he lost by 10 statewide in the 2020 special, which was on the same day as the Wisconsin primary for president. But still, long way to go. He's not doing really that well in the early returns in these places. That could change as more votes are counted, obviously. And even with Milwaukee not looking that great for Janet so far, and that might change down the stretch, statewide, these rural counties, Vernon, it's very early, but Janet with a 80-point lead, that's obviously going to narrow. County might even flip when it's all said and done, but that's not good enough. You can't win elections like this. You can't win elections if this is your turnout in these places. You just can't. That's not how this works. Arnie Hernandez says, hey, Rep, shout out, hey, Trump, you'll win if you hire him. Well, we'll see. We'll see about that. He probably would. He absolutely would. But the Republican Party doesn't listen to people like me. If they did, they'd be in a much better position than they are right now. And even though Dan Kelly is technically, it's a nonpartisan position, same thing. Republicans are aligned with Kelly. Democrats are endorsing. They're aligned with Janet. So, yeah, this isn't really looking all that great for Dan Kelly so far. It is early, and that margin's almost certainly going to narrow given what's left, but still not exactly where he needs to be. So make sure you guys like the stream down below regardless. Subscribe to the channel if you have not yet subscribed. We're going to be covering this election tomorrow when all the results are done for sure. Let's see. It's 100,000 votes. 100,000 votes, and 32% of the vote is in. This is not supposed to be a high turnout election, but there's 100,000 vote differential so far favoring Janet as we speak. Waukesha is 71% in. Nothing really fully in out of Washington so far. But yeah, it's not looking good. You look at the remainder of the votes here. Kelly's going to need to win somewhat of around 55% plus of those votes if he wants to win this election. I don't know if I see that yet, but we'll see. IB says Janet won Heartland and Waukesha, Trump plus 20. It's not good. Not good at all. There's definitely a crisis that the Republican Party has right now. And once again, are they going to fix it properly? No, of course not. They're not going to. They never do. They don't want to listen. They don't learn. So what can I say? But 100,000 vote differential. 32% of the vote is in. And that's with Waukesha 71% in. Assuming you want to take that at face value. Madison, 54% in. A lot of votes left out of Dane County, probably going to net the Dems another 70,000 votes. Milwaukee County, you're probably going to see Janet gain another 40,000 votes out of there. And yes, the remainder of the state is going to favor Dan Kelly, but is it going to be by enough to get him over the hump? Probably not. So it's not looking good. We'll go back to Chicago, where Brandon Johnson still maintains a 7,000 vote lead, 16% of the vote remaining to report there. And now the Democrat in the special election has taken a 9-point lead, which will axe the Republicans' chances of getting a supermajority in the state. Tracking the core of stuff and more says the Republican Party needs to embrace some form of socialism to have a chance. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that that would be the accurate answer to this. I think that economic populism, absolutely, they're going to need to do that. If you're talking about, oh, we're going to go out there and go full Bernie Sanders on the economic side of things, no, that's not exactly going to pay off at all. Sam Madsen says Scott Pressler worked for 6 weeks for nothing. Well, apparently that's exactly, but there's only one of him. That's the thing. You only have one Scott Pressler. The Democrats have thousands that they bus in from out of state. Why don't we do the same thing as well? Doesn't seem like we do that enough. We might do it here and there, but not exactly enough. And that's the problem. We have a lot of talent that we don't exactly use or we put in the wrong places. And look what happens. Double D Homestead says Ronna McDaniel should not be the head of the RNC again. I agree, although this problem is a little bit deeper than just her, especially when you talk about this election in Wisconsin, which she had exactly zero pullover, and it's technically a nonpartisan election. But it is true. You have a messaging problem, and she definitely is very emblematic of that, and her going would have been a massive W for the Republican Party. Dan Krieger says, hey, Rep, it's been a while. I've been rediscovering my faith in God. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you. And I'm proud of you for that, by the way. Keep it up. That's great to hear. But in terms of this election right here, it's not looking too good. Now it's 117,000 vote lead for No Jail Janet. No Jail Janet with a 117,000 vote lead so far. That is not looking good. Dane County is 69% in. Milwaukee, 67% in. Jefferson's 83% in, which is a county west of Waukesha. It's in between Madison and Milwaukee. And Kelly has just a 2-point lead in Jefferson County. Jefferson County, to put that into perspective, it voted for Donald Trump by 15 percentage points. You're talking about a ridiculous underperformance in a lot of these places across the state of Wisconsin. It's not looking good. It's not. And as much as people are going to say, oh, it's abortion, is it really? Is abortion the reason why voters in southwestern Wisconsin aren't turning out? Seems like Kelly's margins in the suburbs, which would be around your, suburban women that care about abortion, even though a lot of those suburban women that are voting are well over the age where they would even have to worry about that. Like, come on, seriously. You could say that's maybe part of it with like energizing turnout in Madison or whatever, but that's pretty much about it. Sisyphus says, why is it so hard to get rurals to turn out election after election? This keeps happening. Is it time to get some suburbs back? Well, a lot of those suburbs aren't coming back, and a lot of them you can't even make them come back because there are demographic changes within those suburbs, especially in Northern Virginia, especially in places like, I don't know, suburban Atlanta, but it is what it is. BW says we don't trust the elections anymore because of 2020. And I disagree with that notion either. I mean, that might explain some of the problem, but how do you explain like Virginia? How do you explain New York? How do you explain Florida if it's just people that are just not trusting the system in full, not showing up? That's a problem. And I think that it can be detrimental to discuss that issue at length on the campaign trail, but that's not something that Daniel Kelly really did or something that would have really impacted this election. So I wouldn't say it's really that. And then you have these polls that show that, it's people that believe in election stuff that we're not going to mention that are like the most enthused to vote, and like every single poll that gauges that. So I don't really think that's true, or that's like the determining factor of underperforming for Republicans. Jonathan Williams says it really is abortion that's driving high turnout. I mean, in Madison maybe, but in the rest of the state where you have all these rural voters, a lot of them just don't care about the issue either way. So, Dino, I'm going to have to redact that for TOS purposes, but thanks for the super chat. Saga Fraga says, I feel like our generation needs to have a war in order to save itself. No leaders, no morals, nothing to believe in, no faith. Well, you're going to lose that war. You would at this point, because you don't even control you don't control anything at this point. So if you decide to go down that road and say, if there was like a hypothetical civil war, which we disavow the aspect of it happening for even unironic purposes, because we have to maintain this country. We're not going to do this national divorce boomer fantasy because it doesn't work and you're ceding ground. But you would lose that hypothetical war. You would lose it. Absolutely. So Ben says, expand on how tonight's results foreshadow 2024. Well, 2024 is a year and a half away. I'm not saying that they fully do, but I think if you put somebody like Ron DeSantis at the top of the Republican ticket, who's more, I guess you would say, generic of a Republican for the Rust Belt, yeah, I don't think he's winning Wisconsin either. I think that he'd underperform Trump, because Trump's base doesn't fully turn out unless Trump's at the top of the ticket in many cases. And what did Trump have to say about this election? Nothing. So the people that are going to blame him, ironically, the way to do it effectively and accurately would to say that he did nothing to help Daniel Kelly out, which is 100% true. He didn't really help him out. I don't even know if he endorsed him. And they probably told him to stay out of this race because they're like, Trump is cancer. He needs to stay out of the Republican Party in their elections. And then the base stays out as well. The boomers in southwestern Wisconsin turn out at lower numbers because of that, and then they lose. And they're not getting solid suburban margins either. 85% of the vote is in Waukesha. He's at 58% of the vote. Washington County, he's doing a little bit better. Ozaukee, he's only up by 4. Yeah, this is over. This is over. Even if that margin narrows, this is over. 100% over. Christopher Laurie says, this is how incompetent the GOP is. There are states with potential to become conservative, but too ignorant to reach them. Evil and stupid party. We can't have a country with these people. Well, not with these people leading the Republican Party. There's not going to be a country at all that's going to be even remotely recognizable to this country, even today, in about 10 or 20 years. Longhorn Politics has sell Wisconsin to Canada. Yeah, I think we need to save Wisconsin still. Again, this whole, get rid of this state, get rid of California. Like, I get it. I understand it. But the thing is, we achieve manifest destiny for a reason. We don't need to be ceding ground to the point where all we have left is like one congressional district in the state of Nebraska. But we need an absolute overhaul of many aspects of our country. And it's not going to happen for quite some time. It's really not. Even if Donald Trump or whoever is at the top of the ticket wins in 2024, it's really not. The average voter or the average conservative probably didn't even know this election was taking place in the state of Wisconsin. And as a result, they're not voting. And that's a major, major problem. Okay, more of the vote came in. Where did it come from? Ozaukee, now it's 90%, and Kelly is up by 6. This county voted for Donald Trump by 12, and even that was a gross underperformance of past years. So, yeah, not looking too good. Even if the margin does narrow, there's no way Kelly's going to get, 58% of the outstanding vote, because that's what it would take at this point to win. And Marathon County, 95% in out of Marathon County. I believe that's this one. That's a 10-point lead. Marathon County voted for Donald Trump by 18. So that's an underperformance of 8 points. It's probably what you're going to see the end result underperformance be statewide. So, yeah, this is not looking good at all. It's not looking good. And if the Republican Party wants to win in the future, they're going to need to look into this. They're going to need to look into these little underperformances, because a lot of the Democrats that are voting in this election, they're not of high educational attainment. These are voters that didn't vote at all in many cases in the early 2000s, especially if you're talking about like ethnic minorities, but still they're able to get them out at high numbers. Republicans are unable to do the same thing with voters that they can have. I exactly wonder why that is, and it's for obviously various reasons. The reasons why Republicans do so well among those types of voters in the South is because they've built up bases there. There's a higher political participation. There's a different culture. You don't have this political culture among these disaffected voters in the Midwest. And as a result, it consistently burns Republicans down the stretch. And if you had that, then, I mean, you would actually see some sort of change. And Trump is probably the closest thing that these voters have ever really had to that. And part of it is because the Republicans historically have never really spoken to their interests, but it is what it is. Now the lead is down to 14. More votes are pouring in. Waukesha is at 88%. Washington's at 71. Ozark's at 90. Kenosha is still going for Janet. There's nothing yet out of Racine that has been reported, but I think that it's pretty obvious that Janet is the winner here. The margin of victory for Janet is the astounding thing that Republicans are going to be sitting there scratching their heads about. And Nodal has taken the lead on a high note. Nodal, the state Senate candidate for the Republicans, he has a very slim lead with 86% of the vote reporting. Denise Fan 101 says we deserve to be a regional party at this point. Well, I mean, that's basically where they're headed. And they're going to do everything they can do to purge Trump, to purge like Trumpism out of the party. And it's going to get ugly, and it's going to get even worse for them as a result. Alex Kuchar says Waste Man called it for Janet prostate sandwich. Never heard that one before. Yeah, I can't argue with that. I can't really disagree and say that that's a bad call or that that's an early call. Even though it is true there are some conservative votes outstanding, it's true that the margin will narrow. No, this is definitely going to be something that narrows. And the right Indoro, or not the right Indoro, there was like a campaign to right Indoro, who was like the other conservative candidate in this race, who previously supported cash bail, which is like losing by 50 points as we speak on the same electorate. But Jennifer Doro, the other candidate for the Republicans or the conservative side, there's a campaign to write her in by people who were just spiteful that she lost. And there was also I guess you would say a group of people that said that she would obviously be the one to win this race and that Kelly couldn't win it. And yeah, I don't think that Doro would have even come close. So dealing with those people is going to be definitely irritating, but what can I say? Philip Garcia says there simply may just not be enough of us in the right states anymore. The interstate system exists for a reason. Well, people can move. Obviously, people are moving. Older voters are moving out of the Rust Belt to Florida, to Texas. And definitely it's helped make those states more Republican, or at least in the case of Texas, keep it in limbo. But I mean, that's not enough to explain this, especially because you do have a lot of liberals leaving and a lot of trends working in the conservatives' favor as well. So yeah. Living Dream says, I'm not sure why people think DeSantis should run. Well, because they are electabros. They think he's electable. He's eluctable. They say he'll do well among the independents, who also happen to, in these same polls, say they disapprove of Trump, approve of Biden, probably are not going to be voting for Ron DeSantis either, especially in the Midwest. I think you do better in a place like Arizona, maybe Georgia, but not in a state like Wisconsin, not even close. What you get is like this election right here. What happened? It's all, then they'll blame Trump. Trump's voters, they were spiteful. It's still Trump's fault. Just like they said in Georgia, even though Trump did everything he possibly could do to help the candidates win. Shout out to Jack Reynolds for the 5. Mr. Jimmy said, wish COVID never happened. It screwed us long-term. It absolutely did. It absolutely did, especially given the midterm underperformance, because people would say, well, Trump winning a second term would cause the midterms to be bad for Republicans. And well, the midterms were pretty bad for them. They may have even been better, at least in the Senate races, if Trump had a high approval rating, or at least an approval rating among 50 and was there. Maybe if Trump won and got another term, then you would have seen the Georgia runoffs at least go on the Republican side, or maybe there wouldn't even be a runoff in the case of Purdue, assuming you give Trump 1% there. Purdue would have cleared the runoff threshold. Denise Fan 101 says, if Trump can't run again, do we have a chance ever? I mean, yes, but you're going to need a transformational figure. Obviously, you're going to have to move on from Donald Trump at some point, because either Trump will win in 2024. He's not going to be installed as king. And even if he was, then you'd see like Ivanka take over the country, and that'd be a total disaster for other reasons. But no, I think you're going to have a chance at some point, but this is not looking good necessarily. It's not looking too good for Republicans, at least at the rate that they're going right now. The party is broken. They'll blame Trump. even though Trump was the only one that really gave them a chance in the Rust Belt. But at some point, they're going to have to look in the mirror and understand, yeah, maybe we need more of that messaging, and maybe we need less of these dinosaur rhinos with their messaging that doesn't work, that doesn't get voters to turn out, that doesn't work for them. Somebody like JD Vance actually understands this, whether people think that he's like a viable presidential contender or not. I mean, this guy went up against a candidate that was created by the Democrats in a lab for Ohio, who vastly outspent it. Vance barely even campaigned and won by 6 and change in a year where the generic ballot was, 1 to 2% redder than it was, or 1 to 2% bluer, I should say, than it was in 2020. So I think you need Vance-like candidates for the Rust Belt for sure. That would definitely help out quite a bit. People that can actually speak to voters, but you also need that coupled with a turnout apparatus and operation to get these voters to turn out. So I think you do have a chance, but what they're doing right now is not working, but they keep doing what they're doing. Jack Reynolds says, is mail-in balloting playing a role in Wisconsin? Well, allegedly we were supposed to see it utilized more on the right, but apparently we didn't. Those mail-in votes in those counties that we thought would be more favorable to Republicans were not more favorable to Republicans. So, I mean, definitely playing a role. Yeah, but playing a role in favor of the Democrats for sure, because they're getting out their low propensity base with them. We're not getting out ours. So it's not looking too good so far. But make sure you guys like the stream. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel as well. Make sure you guys hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video either. We're going to keep the stream going. We don't have a declared winner yet, but I'm pretty sure that we all know very well who's going to take this thing. So let's see, more super chats. Let's pull this up. Okay, it's not loading. Let's see. Literally, God says Nevada's more winnable for Trump than Michigan and Wisconsin. I would agree in the case of Michigan. Wisconsin, it depends. If he's on the top of the ticket, it's a different ball game for sure. But as of right now, given what they're going to try to do and utilize the court to do over the next couple of years, probably not. Nevada is probably more winnable, given trends, if the state stays stagnant and then this happens. So let's see. Miller 117 says, I'm going to be getting the hell out of here in Wisconsin. Been in Dodge County all my life, and the social decay is real here, especially growing up in the 2000s, 2010s. Yeah, I mean, depends where you're going. Ideally, people in Wisconsin don't leave because the state is still salvageable, but maybe a little bit less salvageable after tonight. Sam Madsen says, why did we ever vote out rural conservative Dems in legislatures and Congress? They're the only way to block the left's agenda, as the GOP can't do it. I mean, in some cases, this may be true, at least on social issues. Vault Boy, thanks for the one. Top Gear Fan 99 says, what's your opinion on the No Labels organization? Will it help or hurt us? I'm trying to get them on the ballot in my state. No Labels. I don't exactly know what that is. Is that like a forward? It's like a forward party type of thing. I don't know. I don't know what would really come out of it. I don't know if they'd even have the resources to get on the ballots, especially with all of the I guess you would say lawsuits that they try to throw your way. Dallas Suck 69 says, we're taking more L's than the Lions. When does the ship turn around for us? Well, you don't have leadership. I mean, you look at the Lions and they put actual competent leadership in there with Holmes and Campbell. And now it's like, what the hell is going on? They're actually contenders within 2-3 years. There's no real effort to rebuild. And obviously you can't fully burn the apparatus down to do so, but you can get rid of a lot of these people that are causing you to shoot yourselves in the foot and lose. Enough of this old messaging that just doesn't work. It doesn't work time and time again. You're going to have to focus on issues that matter. And that doesn't mean you cave on issues, but it means that you don't yell about socialism 24 hours a day. The radical left. What does that even mean? The radical left? What does radical mean to a lot of people? Like, a lot of people aren't even that political. You're the radical right, the radical left. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean to an average Wisconsin voter who works a third shift at a factory? Doesn't really mean anything to them. Shout out to Vincent Corey for the super chat. Let's see. Sam Madsen says, for example, Dems had a super majority in the Minnesota House in the 90s, but it was a pro-life majority. This is also true. Shout out to Drock Hansen. Jonathan Williams says, pray for the unborn. This is terrible. Yeah, it absolutely is. Grant Vranikar says, thoughts on 2028 candidates. Is Zeldin a good contender? I'd like someone stronger. I think he was a good fit for running for governor of New York. I don't know if he'd be a good fit nationwide, but maybe a VP or something. I don't know. Let's see. Vault Boy says the GOP doesn't want to win. That's a problem we have right now. They spend more time and money fighting their own party than the Dems. It's petty politics, and it's why we keep losing sick of it. Watch the documentary if you have not. It's a very important video. Just 26 minutes of your time. It will explain everything wrong with the Republican Party in the midterms. Everything wrong. Nick the Enlightened says, I'm starting to think 2016 was a fluke. I mean, in a case it was, and the New York Times has called it for Janet. They've called it for Janet right now. 56% to 43% so far. She leads. 63% of the vote is in. And the margins are not good in the WOW counties. They are abysmal in places like Madison. Turnout ridiculously high in the strongholds the Democrats needed to turn out to win. They netted over 120,000 votes in Madison alone. Biden netted about 160, 170,000 in the 2020 election. And you're seeing that's going to increase probably to like 140. That's like midterm level turnout for Dems. Republicans asleep at the wheel yet again. What is new? Absolutely nothing is new. Absolutely nothing. Vincent Corey says, my dad is a MAGA lover from Illinois. He stated that because Dick Durbin endorsed Paul Velas would win. It's a stupid question, but do you know if Durbin's endorsements are consistent to support this claim? Well, I haven't even checked the mayoral election. Johnson still leads, so if that's true, maybe not. Obviously, more establishment Dems were coming out for Vallas, and that definitely is something that may have caused him to perform well initially. But against Johnson in the runoff, the grassroots support definitely getting Johnson over the hump. This is probably the biggest W that the far left wing of the GOP, the Dems has taken in probably a few years or so. Drock Hansen says Kelly was hammered with ads about unrecusing himself after taking donations from the family involved in the case. Well, I will say that the ads were something that hurt Kelly early on. But down the stretch, the funding gap kind of narrowed a little bit. And at the end of the day, seems like it didn't even make that much of a difference. It's a 14-point lead for Janet. Moores 1920 says thoughts on the greater Idaho movement. I'd be down. I'd be down for more counties in, Washington and Oregon join. I should make a video on that. Because it's true. If you have more counties in these blue states that are leaving, joining a state like Idaho, or you have more counties in Virginia or wherever, or northern or western Maryland joining West Virginia, that's a good thing. Now, the problem is you're probably going to see the inverse start to happen in some of these other places, and Democrats are going to be able to run up their electoral votes, even though geographically speaking, it would be a little bit hard for them to do that. So I don't know. Dallas Sucks 69 says, is it over for the GOP? Because it certainly seems like it. Yeah, and again, keep in mind, this isn't like a GOP versus Dem race on paper, but it basically is. The policy stakes matter. Redistricting, that matters. Abortion's a big one, but also election laws. They're going to get far, far worse. So Republicans need to actually utilize them to their advantage. And even in the special election for the state Senate district, that could very well be a flip. And that's with the electable candidate, by the way, that won the primary there. And right now, it's a possibility that that guy in a WOW County state Senate district goes down to a Democrat. Yeah, granted, turnout is lower. It's down ballot, but still doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. First of all, the reason why Kelly won the primary outstate is because of name recognition. Doro was known for being a Waukesha County judge. He did well in the surrounding areas, but Kelly already was a statewide candidate. He already was a statewide judge. So that's also important to note, but still, this is not looking any different from the primary results where you did see Janet win by a decent amount. You want to look at the primary election. Her combined with the far left Democrat got approximately 54% of the vote. That's probably going to be around what the end result's going to look like when all of the votes are counted here. And it might be even a wider margin than that given some of these recent returns. Darth Vader 33 says, Red Eagle, I'm seeing a lot of similarities from the Spanish Civil War ideologically in the U.S. I'm not saying that we'll see one anytime soon, but I believe that we're fighting one now ideologically. I mean, yes, technically, ideologically, we have been very divided as a country for quite some time, and that divide has entirely been caused by the left going off a cliff. Some people will blame the right for that. It's their fault. It's like, no, it's not. It's really not. You see these like 538 articles, and they're just easily laughable when you look into it. But I don't know. You are going to see things get worse before they get better in this country, I will say. And it may take a crisis for the country to become united again, some might say, or unite people over on the right wing back, culturally, at least when it comes down to it. And you'll see a conservative renaissance. But I don't even know if that's possible at this point. Think about it. Back when 9/11 took place, the country did come together. And you saw Bush with like a 90% approval rating, and he maintained a ridiculously high approval rating until 2004. Are you going to see that happen again? No. You'd see, like, if it happened today, you'd see, don't criticize the attackers. This is an Islamophobia problem, whatever. That's what they would say. And it might be scary to think about, especially people that have, lived through that. I wasn't really around at the time. At least I wasn't really sentient to my surroundings, being like 1 year old or whatever. But for people that were around, it's pretty obvious if you look around and you see what happens nowadays after every single attack that you see. What happens? The media blames the right wing. Doesn't matter who does it. It's the right's fault. Oh, some transgender shooter goes crazy in a Christian private elementary school. Oh no, this is a horrible day for transgenders and transphobia. That's what Biden will say the day after it takes place, and he'll be cracking jokes about ice cream. You don't live in a serious country anymore. You really don't. And a lot of people necessarily that don't fully pay attention aren't really privy to that, even though we have social media. And maybe if they were, they'd be voting more. But you don't even have any real effort to get people to pay attention or any turnout operation in states that you actually need to win, because you'll do just fine in Alabama. Hell, in the midterms, Republicans got like 70 something percent or some ridiculous margin. Katie Britt did much, much better than Trump did actually in the state. And she was very Trump aligned, at least rhetorically speaking. But it's like, yeah, we're a disaster as a nation right now. A disaster. Let's see. Christopher Laurie says, this is why I think nullification, decentralization, and localization is probably the future of America, not secession. I think the national renewal is a far climb. Well, absolutely. That will have to be the end goal, though, of this country if it is to survive. In terms of localization or federalism, I think that there are definitely pros to that. I don't necessarily believe that we should entirely be opposed to a strong national executive that's taking control of things and is actually taking effort to change and mold the culture in the right direction. I don't think Trump is going to be that guy. Definitely don't think Ron DeSantis is going to be that guy, even if at the state level he's done a couple of things. But you do need more effective governors, probably more effective governors and state legislative candidates that are running that will eventually occupy those spots in the state legislatures that are going to be a lot better than whatever the best we have now is, because the best we have now isn't necessarily going to be enough when push comes to shove. And it is a trickle up effect that will save the GOP. It's not going to be saved by these career politicians or these candidates that don't know what the hell they're doing, that go out there and lose a statewide election by 15 points, even if they're decent on the issues. So Sam Madsen says Nodal's done. This shouldn't matter for a supermajority, but it does since Republicans somehow didn't flip a Trump plus 5 driftless seat. Yeah, not good. Not good. Manny says thoughts on Netanyahu's judicial reform. I haven't looked into it. Jared Walsh, should the GOP need to become more center to center right or just be far right for the rest of their life after this? I don't believe that we need to be putting these labels on it. Definitely the labels or whatever the left is going to label you as. And if you cave on everything, oh, you're just right. You're just right wing. You're center right. Because that's what they want the right to be. They want the right to be weak and they want them to be pushovers. If you don't cave, you're far right and you're evil and you need to be purged out of the political aspect of society. That's how they view it. Now, I don't believe we need to put labels on it. I think the right needs to embrace some more authentically, nationalistic, populistic principles, and then they do better, especially in places like Wisconsin. I don't think Kelly was representative of that at all. And obviously he had the backing of rural Wisconsin, just like somebody like Tim Michels did. But Tim Michels is a career politician, just like Dan Kelly is. He might have been an outsider in a way because he was from business. He had a very big firm in the, I believe, the Oshkosh or Fond du Lac area. But beyond that point, there's really nothing to it. So you need better candidates. That part is true. Candidate quality does technically matter, but it's not based off of whatever the electabros say it is. It's really not. And there's a lot of mechanics issues to this as well. So let's see. Garrett Vranikar says GOP should run an economic nationalism over social issues, tariffs, bring back manufacturing and single income families, and forever wars. I think in a state like Wisconsin, they do care a lot more about the economic side of things than the social side of things. If you run like an explicitly, I'm like a diehard pro-life, no exceptions candidate running in, southwestern Wisconsin, that doesn't really play out well, even if it might be the right thing to do or whatever. You can run candidates like that in Alabama, West Virginia, but that part of Wisconsin, you can have candidates that are pro-life, obviously, and vote that same way. But you're going to need to be very tactful about how you navigate everything on the campaign trail and look to the issues that actually benefit certain people, or what you have to actually speak to their needs in that part of Wisconsin. You have to make these people feel important. If you're going to be just yelling about socialism or whatever, even at a time where we have a very corporate opposition party that purges their people that claim to be, we're socialists or whatever, and make sure that they just bend the knee to the corporate establishment Dems at every turn. Yeah, that's not going to be a winning strategy or a winning message to these people. It's not. There's a long way to go. Maybe we need to do another documentary pretty soon on the Rust Belt. I've always talked about that because we did the Sun Belt one, but the Rust Belt one that was initially supposed to be very favorable to changes in the Rust Belt, we may have to revisit that a little bit and kind of make it a little bit more, I wouldn't say doomer-esque, but I would say a little bit more of like a sobering type of thing for a lot of people in regards to that. But yeah, there will be more documentaries. There will be one on the new arrivals to Congress. That one will still happen. Will happen very shortly, probably within a month or so. I'm going to start working on it within a week or so, and I think we're going to keep editing them more consistently because a lot of people tend to like them and they do well in the algorithm. But I don't know. We'll do another Texas one. We'll discuss quite a few states and quite a few issues maybe as well. But the content will not stop. I will say that much. But make sure you guys like the stream, subscribe. We're not done yet. We are not done. Even though we know a winner, we're not done. But these margins are awful. Winnebago, Brown County's probably, that one might even flip at the end of the day. Maybe not. But this right here, and again, it's like these areas, no, they are not exactly coming in the right way. And I will say that is not a good thing. And I'll also go as far to say as that the people will blame like Trump somehow. It's like, where was Trump during this election? Like, if you're going to blame Trump, blame him for not getting involved enough, not for like vaguely endorsing Kelly in 2020. So, everyone goes to the polls hating Trump. It's like nobody cares on the Dem side about, I'm going to own Blumph in this day and age. They don't. They're voting based off of the cultural soul of America. They're voting to gain their power because they know their leaders are going to use it. We don't use it when we have power. We complain about principles. We don't exactly have the balls to do anything. And we keep losing every single time. And we don't win, in many cases, re-election if you even get somebody in there because they don't do anything. I will say DeSantis had a very good public relations department that made him look like he was doing a lot more than he really was. And not saying that he didn't do anything, but the reason why he won by 20 points is because a lot of people perceived him as effective, and the opposition to him really didn't come up with a clear, concise answer to why he was like evil or whatnot. And he won by 20. And even like governors like Brian Kemp, who are weak on a lot of things, like he had a primary challenge and he passed a lot of legislation that was very conservative. And what happened at the end of the day? He ended up winning by like 8 points or so over the same individual that he beat by 2 in 2018. So like incumbency matters. You're able to use power to your advantage. It's going to help you. It's going to help a lot of incumbents. I will say that much. Let's see any more super chats. We have more super chats. Tom Sav says the GOP needs to do ballot harvesting. That is true. They don't. I don't know about the legality of it in Wisconsin, but still, they didn't really utilize early voting in the rural counties that mattered. And even then, a lot of the early voting in the suburbs we thought was going to be for them was not. So that's not good. Humanoid Gaming says Midwest swing states like Trumpist economics, but dislike conservative social stances, vice versa for Sunbelt swing states. I disagree. I just think they're a little apathetic socially. I don't think they like political correctness. And I think that Trump not being politically correct drove them to him. I think on immigration, they're not pro-mass immigration at all in the slightest. I will say that when it comes to abortion, they don't really care. When it comes to even like the gay stuff in some cases, I would say that they do care, but not as much as they used to. But part of that is just cultural conditioning as a whole, because even then you had states like California shooting down gay marriage. But I don't think that they are really down with the whole like alphabet mafia type of stuff either, like in the slightest. So I wouldn't say they don't care about conservative social stances. I think that there's some that they do care about. I think there's some where they're just agnostic on the issue. They're not ridiculously like pro-abortion, but then again, they don't really care about the issue either way. So an election like this, it's not going to like prevent them from turning out for a presidential candidate like Trump, who promises to like overturn Roe v. Wade or to get more conservative pro-life justices on the court or whatever. But it's not exactly going to be enough to get them to vote for a Supreme Court candidate in a race like this. Like even in 2019, when Trump was in the White House, you look at a lot of these counties in the Supreme Court election, Republicans won. They weren't like running up the margins by a ridiculous amount either. So just is what it is. All right, let's see. Darth Vader 33 says if Trump were to drop out of the race, I don't believe he will, but let's assume he does. Who replace that is winnable? Well, if Trump doesn't run or drops out, DeSantis will be the nominee, probably, unless something drastic happens. Now, that's just the way that it is. Some people might not like that. I would ideally, in an ideal world, like to see somebody else in 2028. I'd rather see like a Vance or Hawley type than somebody like Ron DeSantis, but that's just me. But in 2024, if Trump drops out somehow, yeah, you will see Ron DeSantis more likely than not become the nominee. I will say that much. Now, Manny says, should the GOP copy the UK Conservative Party? Absolutely not. Dallas Sucks 69 says, Ben Shapiro will find a way to blame Trump. Well, Ben is like the OG elected, bro, and he really does speak volumes because of how much influence that he has within conservative dialogue. He's one of the biggest subscribed to YouTube channels, politically speaking, in general. It's not like a major news network. He's like, what, 5 million subs? It's crazy. Hollowed Pilots is focus on pro-white issues and you'll start winning. Well, it depends really what you mean by that. Yes, man says, has anyone ever really been for even as decided to use even go want to? I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means, but thanks for the super chat. Byron Marble says Nodal's going to win tonight, not a total L for Wisconsin. Let's see. Let's check it. Well, he's up, but that lead is fluctuated up and down, so I don't even know. All right, let's see. Sam Madsen says there's a precinct in northern Wisconsin that was Obama plus 60 and Trump plus 50. What do you bet it will be in this race when the precinct data comes out? I don't know. Probably very, very, very unfavorable for Kelly compared to the Trump margin. If it's Trump plus 50, I'm going to guess I'll guess Kelly by 14. That'll be my prediction. It might even be lower than that. Denede Fan 101 says looking more like we will be the party that can only control the Senate and only by a slight margin at that. I will say, really going to stress the 2024 Senate elections pretty much just all the way until then. Because I think that our main goal should be to flip the big three. And the big three includes West Virginia, it includes Ohio and Montana. Should be very easy to get done. And then maybe we could look at Arizona and Nevada, because Arizona's a three-way race. Nevada, Rosen, she's like, whatever. She's just like there. And it's possible Laxalt could run again. If the Republican nominee takes Nevada, I think the Senate race could go too. But I don't know. It's just like we don't have a bench in the Rust Belt. You can't win Pennsylvania. You can't win Michigan. Wisconsin, maybe, but it's going to be a lot harder after tonight. I think if Trump is like on the ticket, does everything correctly, you'll stand a chance if you put up a decent nominee for that Senate seat. But I don't know, man. I really don't know. I shout out to Ike's Political Minute for the retracted message. Thank you for the super chat. But yeah, we have 1,100 viewers. Like the stream, subscribe to the channel as well. Let's see. We will check the margins consistently throughout in terms of the Chicago mayoral election, where Johnson has taken a 13,000 vote lead. Velas is not doing so well there. And then you look at Dan Nodal, he leads by 700 votes. 9% of the vote is left here. We'll have to see what goes on, but it's not exactly looking too good for Republicans overall. Even if they win that district, they should have won it by a lot more than this. This is not a very good margin. And part of that you could say is down ballot effects that are coming from the top of the ticket, which is the Supreme Court election. But it's just not looking too good. It's really not. So we'll see. I do think that 2024, there's hope. I think down ballot, there's hope, depending on who we run. If we run decent candidates, have better messaging, it's possible. But that's a tough thing to ask. I do think that Trump stands a chance, though, against Biden, because people forget that Biden is disapproved of. If Biden's going to be going up against Trump, it's not going to be an orange man bad election so much as it's going to be a let's go Brandon type of election, which, again, there's no guarantee that the Republicans defeat him. But I will say that if Biden goes up there and is the nominee, if his approval rating is somewhere in the 40s, then it's possible that if Trump runs a decent campaign that he knocks him off, because it will be a referendum on Biden. It'll be Biden's presidency versus Trump's presidency. We all know about Biden's baggage. We all know about Trump's baggage. We all know about the scandals that have taken place in the administrations, none really in the Trump administration that amounted to anything. Biden's had quite a few in his that you could say were a little bit more egregious, but even then didn't even impact him in the midterms. But it will be a referendum on the state of the economy at the time, among plenty of other things. And if Trump remains on his trajectory, yes, he does have a chance in 2024, regardless of whatever the conservative establishment will say. This notion that, oh, people that voted for Blumf in 2020 now hate the guy. It's like, whatever. It doesn't really exist. There's people that voted for Biden now that disapprove of him vastly. Not saying all of them are going to come to Donald Trump, but I am saying that enough of them could just defect either to Trump or a third party for Trump to have a chance at victory. That part is true. And yes, a lot of it depends on the campaign that Donald Trump runs in 2024. Because if he runs a very 2020-esque campaign that he ran where he panders to voters who aren't voting for him, just goes out there, flip-flops, is kind of fence-sitting on things like he did with the riots or COVID, like, yeah, not going to help him. Absolutely. If he spends time focusing on the 2020 election down the stretch, regardless of whatever you think happened, I'm not saying that he can't raise questions. What I am saying is if you make your entire campaign about that and you make your entire brand about that, even people that agree with you on that issue are going to be less enthused to vote for you because there's a lot of other issues people care about. And that's the thing. So, and also the turnout apparatus, that needs to happen. Trump is one of the only people in the Republican Party in terms of leadership or relevance that has actually talked about making it a thing. I'm not going to take credit for that, but I know people around him watch my content from time to time. I will say that much. So, talking about it definitely will have this triple up effect, regardless if he's actually hearing it from me directly or indirectly. He's going to hear it from some people directly or indirectly. You got to change the conversation if you want to be able to get things done and win. Tommy Robinson says, is Scott Presler a psyop? I don't know if he's a psyop, but his canvassing hasn't really amounted to very much since the 2016 election. I don't know if that's his fault or if you could sit here and blame him for that, though, because he did spend a lot of time in Pennsylvania in 2020. Yeah, didn't fully, help move the needle. And same thing with this, but I'm not going to say he doesn't do work registering voters that's like not worth anything, because it is true that you need people doing that. The problem is he's the guy. You need a lot more guys than just one out there doing that. You need an entire network of people, and you need to be paying them a decent salary. You have the financial means to do that. You're not using it. You don't fund your own candidates. That's a problem. If you do that, one of the reasons why Blake Masters underperformed so much in 2022, McConnell wouldn't fund him. He had to fire 90% of his campaign staff. Some of the people working for him weren't even getting paid. They didn't have any resources to their advantage, and they were getting hit, with a $75 million ad difference, just, taking his statements out of context on Social Security. He did pretty well given everything taken into consideration. I think the polls being so off really was the demoralizer for sure. And part of that is because turnout just wasn't what it was anticipated to be in the polling models, which usually benefits, us. If you look at a poll that's, Trump +1, you're like, oh, he'll win the state by like 3 or 4 on average, right? Depending on the state. But if you see a poll that's Trump +1 and he loses by like 5 overall, it's like, how the hell did that happen? I wonder why. Alex Kuchar says, Chicago voters after Brandon Johnson's win, can we have Lightfoot back? Yeah, I wouldn't go that far. But Chicago voters are going to be just fine. They're reaping what they sow. They put in these people, and then they're corrupt, and they are far left, and they're weak on crime. They run the city into the ground, and then, in many cases, they get reelected. It's insane. Union Rail says, regardless of who the Republican nominee is, I think the only way Biden goes down is a major crisis or economic disaster. I will say that I think it's a bit deeper than that. I think that you look into it and it's going to be a close election regardless. We're very polarized. These special elections don't really tell the full story of the political climate. Ike's Political Minutes is, who do you think will win the GOP primary if neither Trump or DeSantis run? Well, Trump's already running. If he drops out and DeSantis doesn't run, I don't know who the hell would jump in the race. The third place would probably, at the moment, would be Nikki Haley, which would be an utter disaster We don't want that to happen, but I don't know. You don't have a bench that's like ready to go at this point. Tracking the core of stuff and more. Lowell says the Republican Party's losing because they can't rely on fake boogeyman politics and culture war issues as prior years. Well, what issues are you talking about exactly? I wouldn't say that there's the boogeyman politics and the culture war issues, because the culture war is real and the Republicans don't fight it. The people that fight it, or at least have the appearance that they're fighting it or doing something, tend to be the only Republicans that actually stood a chance in 2022. So I would fully disagree with that. Sam Matson says the Voss's caucus in the House is probably going to implode. Yeah, maybe. We'll see. But yeah, 72% of the vote is in Janet with a 13-point lead. Checking the margins again, Wakish is 93% in, Kelly with just a 16-point lead, Ozaki 4-point lead, Washington 36-point lead, which compared to Trump won it by 38. That's not the worst margin overall, but when you're bombing statewide in these other counties, it adds up and it's a major problem. And it's not something that's going to benefit you. So absolutely not looking too good. It's not looking too good whatsoever. It's really not. But we are about an hour and 35 minutes into the stream. And still, it does seem as if it's just not looking good. It's not, I mean, we knew it wouldn't have been a good night, but the margin of defeat is very telling. It's almost like after Virginia, something just, whatever, didn't happen. It is what it is. It's not exactly ideal. But you talk about Wisconsin. This is a state that should be a solid Republican state. Look at the demography of it. Look at the educational demography of it. Look at the trends even that we've seen in places like southwestern Wisconsin. They're not coming out today. Not at all. And yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. Let's see. Travis Blaze says there are a lot of left UGs in our state now. I see lots of out-of-state plates now when driving the highways. They don't learn anything. They bring their mind plague with them. I mean, yeah, people moving into like Madison from Chicago, but I don't think it's really that big of a deal to like change anything given the other trends that should be offsetting that. But it is true. Yeah, people fleeing Chicago. A lot of them are going to go up north to Wisconsin. And then what are they doing? And a lot of like older Wisconsinites, they'll be moving to Florida. Then they'll be moving to Texas, Arizona, Nevada in some cases. Yeah, I don't exactly see at the trajectory the Rust Belt is going. A lot's going to need to change mechanically, or the state's not going to naturally become a Republican state. It's just not. It's just going to stay in limbo. It's going to stay solid. It's kind of an issue. So, and it is true. You're going to see some of those like transplants from Chicago voting Republican, just like you see Californians living in Texas and Nevada voting Republican outside of the Austin area. But what can I say? Make sure you guys like the stream and subscribe if you haven't yet. Let's hit 1,000 likes on the stream. Make sure we can hit 1,000. Knight says, how did the Dems win this with the same message since FDR? Well, it's a massively different message on social issues. But in terms of the trajectory speaking, it's like, yeah, because it works. People want Social Security. They want Medicare. They want Medicaid. Whether people think it's a good idea economically or not, that's what people want. And if you don't have an answer to that, well, you're just going to be screwed regardless. Ike's Political Minutes is, why did the rightward Rust Belt trend stop? Well, they stopped because of the fact that you don't exactly have competent leadership in these places turning out these voters. And also, yeah, you could say that during Trump's administration, he spent more time listening to people that didn't have the best interests of those people in mind. And it didn't really help him like have momentum, even though he did just fine and even better in some of these rural places in 2020. That doesn't mean those voters are going to come out in 2022 or whenever for these Republican candidates. So, yeah, there needs to be a lot of changes, and we'll be discussing that in the future on the channel for sure. But it's not entirely looking to be all that good for Republicans at the moment. So, yeah. Let's check the special election. 91% of the vote is in. Nothing's changed. All right. I don't know. I guess this will be a last call for super chats because it does seem like it's a little bit of a shorter night. I don't want to stream for another hour just to get another 5% of the vote counted. We'll continue the conversation tomorrow for sure. I'll be dropping a video on the website too. And the content will continue. Obviously, that's not going anywhere. There's a lot going on in politics. Donald Trump indicted, arraigned. It's only going to help him in the primary. In the general, it's probably going to be a nothing burger, a non-factor. Might energize the base a little bit more. But can I say Mark Horn says his ads were so 80s and generic, he was better, or hers was better. Yeah, and I mean, he didn't get off the ground until late. That's another problem. Again, when you have these divisive primaries, it only stabs you in the back. It's a problem. It absolutely is. You pick one candidate, you clear the field months in advance, and then the primary happens. They win it by a lot, and then you go from there. What is happening right now in the Republican Party is just dumb. It is just dumb. And there's like a 1-to-1 correlation between underperforming and divisive primaries, more so than anything else, regardless of the ideology of the candidate, regardless of, oh, this person is like Trump aligned or whatever. That's not the correlation. Funding, mechanics, competence, and divisive primaries. Those are the things. Those are the things that tend to matter the most. But when you're dealing with people who purposely have bad intentions, not just about what they want the GOP to look like, but what they want the country to look like, because they're the ones, the establishment that claims to be principled, ironically enough, has no principles. Ironically enough, has no vision for the country outside of like generic talking points about economic freedom or whatever, which doesn't even play out that well in southwestern Wisconsin. It doesn't. And these voters are not aligned with the Republican Party. You want to know why Trump cultists exist, so they say, or Trump cultism, that's what they're using, which ironically was like a resist lib term during Trump's presidency. But the reason why that mentality exists, or you have only Trumpers, is because the rest of the GOP is just so weak and doesn't answer to their needs. So the only reason why they get out and vote is for Trump, because they view Trump as a hero compared to the rest of the people in politics, and for good reason as well. That's why these so-called Trump cultists actually exist, or whatever. They'll use these terms that were used by resist libs. Yeah, I wonder why. Because they don't want to vote for you because you're garbage. You suck. Your policies are old. Your messaging is old. Nobody cares what you have to say. And they're not voting for you as a result. And then you have the spiteful side of things when you actually have the good candidates get past the primary, the old school Republicans, either if they are enough of a sizable portion of the electorate to be a voting bloc that votes religiously based off of that, they either stay home, vote for the opponent, write in somebody else, or if they're involved in politics or the political system, they will do nothing to help the candidate that they weren't rallying behind. So this is a problem. Granted, Vranikar says, could Wisconsin go red in 2024? It could, but there's a lot lower of a chance of that happening now than there was a couple hours ago. I will say that much. So that's pretty much it. You'll have people blaming Trump. I don't know how, I don't know why he would even be relevant here. In fact, you think that Trump getting indicted would like spark turnout. And I will say that Trump arguably didn't get involved enough because his base didn't turn out. Clearly, there's a reason why these counties are yellow and not magenta down here. So, all right, guys, we're going to end the stream. Make sure you guys like the stream down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Hit the bell if you haven't yet. Go watch that documentary if you want to hear me talk about this for 26 seconds longer or 26 minutes longer. And you didn't exactly get a chance to watch it because it's very important that you guys do. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle out. Okay, wait a minute. Yeah, I gotta find the where's the StreamYard window? We don't have it. Okay. We're gonna try to do that again right now. All right, guys, like the stream down below, subscribe, hit the bell, watch the documentary. Red Eagle out.